Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining another Casework stream. Super excited to have Carl Solomon with the Solomon Law Group on, and we've got Greg Cade with the Environmental Litigation Group. It wasn't too long ago, Greg, that we were on talking all things AFFF. So with the recent 3M settlement, I started getting a lot of questions, and I thought, whoop, I better get the smart guys on a call and ask them, and let you guys have time to answer some of the questions I've been asked. Let's start off with this, Carl. Why don't you just give a quick high level? I know your firm is out of South Carolina, but share with everyone a little bit about your background, and then Greg, we can do the same with you.
Sure. I've practiced law now longer than I like to admit, since '95, and I primarily do complex litigation. I started getting into the mass tort space, kind of with this case and opioid back in about 2018, 2019. Practice involves medical malpractice and other one-offs, but then again, also the mass cases. I am in this. I'm managing a docket in Camp Lejeune as well as representing school districts and governmental entities in Jewel. Had the privilege of being on the trial team for the Stewart trial. I know we'll talk about that in a little bit in the AFFF litigation as well. Thank you for having me today. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to have you. Greg, why don't you give us a little high level about your background?
Sure. Well, I mean, a little different from Carl. I've been around this space my whole career. Prior to even a lawyer, as an industrial hygienist, doing work in the area of expert witness work, to be honest with you. Then I became a lawyer. So it now puts me at about 30 years around environmental law and toxic torts, where that's the only area I practice in. I continue to handle quite a few matters around, obviously, AFFF type cases, represent water systems in this particular litigation, a lot of firefighters, a lot of people who drank water and gotten sick from this type of exposure. But my career has been pretty heavy in toxic torts, also to include things like asbestos. Done a lot of meso type work for years and years and years, and things of that nature. So that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah, Carl, you mentioned this is one of AFFF. You got involved in the beginning. What was interesting about this litigation that got you involved?
Well, as we all know, these forever chemicals may be one of the biggest things that as lawyers we can affect that'll make humanity better. I mean, literally stop people from getting cancer at the rates they're getting it. So a lot of folks that started looking at AFFF a little before I was aware of it, when I got a chance to be involved in the MDL, I went, and I really looked at it as this is a way that we can use what we have as a law license to literally save lives. And you don't get that opportunity every day. So these are not just big cases in the amount of money that can be generated, but they're huge in the amount of impact that you can have on people. I'm blessed, along with Greg, to represent, firefighters who go out and risk their lives every day. And then they're put at more risk for certain cancers because of these chemicals, not to mention all the people drinking the water and the huge costs put on cities, counties, and other public water systems, which we'll talk about in a moment, for cleaning up a mess that somebody else made. So it was the kind of case that called out to me, gave me the opportunity to be effective, not only from a legal standpoint, but to our entire global community.
You mentioned firefighters. It's often I hear PFAS and AFFF thrown around interchangeably. So, Greg, would you kind of share, how are they different?
Well, I mean, PFAS is really the chemical of concern. PFAS is that chemical, that man-made chemical that has the ability to be useful as a surfactant to suppress fires and, protect furniture, for that matter, like Scotch Guard and things like that. That chemical is put, or it is used in aqueous film forming foam or firefighting foam for the sole purpose of putting out Class B fires. Okay. And those are fires that, that you normally would see in situations like, electrical fires and gas fires and things like that. But the chemical is used, AFFF, frankly, for virtually any fire to extinguish a fire. Okay. If it's not water, it's going to be aqueous film forming foam putting out a fire.
And so you said forever chemicals. So once someone's exposed to this, there's no getting rid of it.
Well, technically, when you talk in terms of forever chemical, that chemical is just something that doesn't break down in nature. Okay.
Mm.
You and I can test our blood and probably find some, some percentage of it in our blood today. It's just a, ubiquitous, persistent chemical, which is the problem. Why it's a problem today. This chemical is just, it's been used so much and it just never will go away. Almost like
Mhm.
about PCBs and such, these chemicals will be with us forever. That's where the terminology comes from.
Okay. Well, Carl, let's talk about the settlement. What's included in the settlement and what stood out about this trial and the settlement to you?
Well, the trial was for the city of Stewart, which was a water provider. And they also had the fortune of being able to provide all utilities and all emergency services for the people in their area. So because of that, they were also practicing on how to put out fires and using AFFF foam to do so. That's something that was marketed by 3M and others. It also is something that greatly increased the use of what was an effective product for times it did not have to be used, made a lot of money for them, but it also put a lot of it into the environment. So when we looked at the Stewart case, there were issues with soil being contaminated and needed to be remediated. There was issue with the water being contaminated, and whether you went an IX exchange or whether you use other carbon things to do it, it's very expensive to get it out. And they even considered, do we switch to a whole different water source? So that's the case that was about to be tried. We think we had a very good opportunity. The trial team led by Gary Douglas had put together a very good story to let people know what happened in Stewart, why it was important, and why it was representative to all the public water systems around the country. The settlement came obviously on the eve of trial. We were very disappointed in the sense that we did not get to tell the story in front of a jury, but also happy that 3M was now taking some accountability for what had been going on for so long. And there are a couple things to be very mindful of when it comes to this settlement. Number one, this is not a one size fits all, one shot, settle all of the liability settlement. This is for water treatment for public water systems, for those that have already detected any amount of PFAS or PFAS in their water system, and an element for those that may detect it in the future. So for water systems, it is extremely important, but there are a lot of things that are not included. We represent people, whether they be water drinkers or firefighters that got contaminated by using the foam, and those cases still have to be resolved. So for anyone sitting around that represents personal injury clients, this does not affect those cases. The way the judge set up the litigation, a public water system was the first bellwether, and that was the first settlement that came. Additionally, there may be other issues that affect public water systems, like soil remediation, for example, that we don't believe is going to be covered by this based on what we've seen in the announcements. The devil's in the details. That hadn't been totally papered for everybody to flip through it and read it. It will be very soon. But part of it is not only what it does, which is very beneficial, but also understanding what it doesn't. And there's a lot of litigation to continue in this matter.
Mm-hmm. Greg, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add that Carl didn't mention, or
not necessarily, other than the fact that, I echo what Carl is suggesting. The litigation is still wide open. Okay. Like Carl said, the judge set the entire litigation up almost in three parts. If you think of it in any other way, you have the obviously the soil remediation concept, as Carl mentions, and then we're going to obviously get to what I think is a large portion of this litigation, the PI side. And that's going to involve the firefighters and people who drank water and certainly got themselves exposed enough to this particular chemical to develop cancers like, prostate cancer and, kidney cancer and testicular cancer, pancreatic cancer, cancers that are clearly linked to PFAS related chemicals. At least what the studies say. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess like for attorneys and firms that have obtained a lot of the PI cases, what does the settlement mean for those for the future AFFF and the PFAS cases? I know, Carl, you have said it doesn't really impact, but I guess, if someone's like, well, what does that mean for us?
From a practical payment impact, PI cases are not included. Those settlements are ongoing. Those negotiations, excuse me, are ongoing and will need to continue, and those PI cases will need to be settled. From a momentum standpoint, whenever a company, no matter how much they deny liability, pays billions of dollars, they're starting to get their head around the fact that they've got to get a solution to what is a very big problem. So for those of us in the PI space, I believe it does mean that we have an opportunity to move forward with the PI cases and potentially settle them. And people should be encouraged by the fact that although this doesn't resolve it, we're moving down the road in a way to get PI cases resolved as well. Most companies, and God knows the stock market, loves for there to be finality and people to understand what certainty is going in the future. And that cannot happen for 3M and many other defendants. There are a lot of other defendants to be addressed on the water system side as well as the PI side beyond 3M until we can get all the cases settled. So I believe it bodes well for us moving forward, but there's a lot of work to be done.
And those are for firms that have an inventory. What about firms and attorneys that are wondering, like, it doesn't really impact, it's a separate, the settlement doesn't have anything to do with these PI cases. Should I go out and acquire? I'm sure people ask you all the time, should I go out and acquire new cases? What would your words of wisdom be on that? Either of you.
Sure. The question has been posed to me many, many times. Greg, is this litigation over? Are those cases still out there? And I simply say, well, we're so involved with this litigation, we see a number of the PI cases coming in each week still. All right. Mm-hmm. Meaning that the way these chemicals were used for so many years, it's clear that these chemicals were out there exposing people and continue to expose people for a long time, and it's going to probably do the same into the future. So if a person or a firm has an interest to get involved with this litigation, it's wide open. I don't think it's a situation where there's a dried up group of cases that just won't exist anymore. No, I think the numbers are still out there for the firefighters, for the water drinkers, and whomever can demonstrate that they've been exposed to these chemicals, AFFF.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only caution I would add is be faithful to the science. Yeah. There's good literature out there on things that are documented to be related. We know maybe in 20 years there'll be more things that they find out about, but for proving a case today, be faithful to the science in any acquisition that you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's an excellent point. These cases do not exist without being able to prove up the science that a person has been exposed and truthfully been exposed enough to be, compliant with what the study suggests, how much a person needs to get exposed to develop these conditions, cancer and non-cancer conditions like ulcerative colitis.
Yeah. Well, I guess for the most part, you kind of gave us the highlights about the settlement. I know firms, lots of folks, attorneys been asking, should I go out and acquire new cases? So we appreciate your feedback there. Anything else that you would, are interested to share with this group about anything else about the trial or about the settlement?
What I would tell people is, kind of stay tuned. There are active parts of this litigation on multiple fronts. Things are changing daily, including there being continued negotiations on several levels. So if you're interested in it, jump in. The water's fine, but you need to dedicate not only some resources, but some time. And for those who are already in, don't be discouraged because everything was not settled at once. This is a very large piece of litigation, and it will continue to be worked through. There's a lot of work to do, but I think we have the ability to get there.
Yeah, that's helpful. Wonderful. Well, Greg, Carl, thank you so much for hopping on a stream, giving everybody some insights, updates as it relates to the settlement and kind of your feedback and thoughts about, whether it's should I go get new cases and such. So thank you both for your time. This has been really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.